Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. It has just been about a month since the Trump administration took over at the White House, but already we've seen a tornado of changes. And just hot off the press, Trump has signed a new executive order seeking to, quote, significantly reduce the size of government by instructing heads of federal departments and agencies to undertake plans for large-scale reductions in force. But what's new this round, Elon Musk, who is now a top advisor to the U.S. president, joined him and took questions from the press in the Oval Office for the first time. So far, Musk appears to be bringing his Twitter takeover playbook to the federal government, using his own giant social media platform X to name and shame anyone who stands in his way as he digs into the federal bureaucracy in his crusade to slash government spending. Now, unlike traditional government figures, Musk rarely holds news conferences or speaks to reporters. Instead, he uses his social media site as a tool to promote his goals as part of the Trump administration. So ultimately, does this communication style work, and does Muskification bode well for the U.S. government? We're about to find out. We're joined now by Bryan DeAngelis, partner and head of Washington office at the Penta Group. Bryan, thanks for joining us pretty early, or pretty late, rather, in your neck of the woods.
Pretty late, but pretty timely, as we just saw the Trump, press conference. So excited to be here and talk about it.
Indeed. Let's crack the whip then. Musk's moves, Bryan, have raised questions about whether America's government could survive the slashing of staff numbers, just like tech companies have, and whether it will suffer the same consequences as X, including the broken systems and sharp decline in value that has troubled X following his acquisition. Do you think a similar approach of reducing government bureaucracy could work in Washington, or could it result in problems similar to those seen at X?
I think given the specific approach he is taking, we're going to see a number of problems and headaches and potentially some real, even life-saving, issues that come out of this. There is plenty of room, I'll be the first to admit, for, a look at government inefficiency and a more thoughtful approach to where we can cut any sort of waste or unnecessary programs, inefficient spending. But this sort of blanket approach, shut down whole agencies, lock people out of their jobs, I really don't think they're thinking about or frankly care about the ripple effects this will have on Americans. They're looking to make headlines, to make waves, to show how, air quotes, tough and serious they are on this without really considering the long-term consequences.
Let's move on to Musk's shunning or avoidance of the mainstream media or traditional press conferences. Do you think that's a smart tactic for public communication, or could it risk alienating some key stakeholders?
I think it'll continue to put a target on Musk. I mean, there are a lot of questions around conflicts of interest, around his business relationship with the government, around his approach to some of these agencies where, they were looking into his businesses, or he disagreed with maybe some of their policies or regulatory approach. There's also serious questions about him and his team's access to sensitive information, access to a lot of our sensitive payment systems in the Treasury Department. So failing to address those is only going to spike not only more curiosity from reporters, but when and if there are conflicts of interest found and surfaced, he's going to have a much harder time sort of explaining why he chose the approach he did. Now, you saw him try to maybe get ahead of this a little bit with the press briefing in the Oval Office just a short time ago. He claims that he's a open book and trying to be transparent and knows there'll be scrutiny, but he's shying away from really engaging in the tough questions and just using his own megaphone on X.
Yeah, let's touch on conflicts of interest, shall we? A California Senator,
Sure.
Adam Schiff, he's warned in a letter to the White House that he feels Musk may use his role as a government official to shield his companies from federal scrutiny. So how much do you think the Dems are willing to yield before they decide enough is enough on that front?
I think Democrats need to turn up the dial here significantly. I do not think the American public elected Elon Musk to do anything. Granted, they did campaign on some of this, but the election was for Donald Trump. And I think there's, part of the populist movement that helped propel Trump to the White House is this idea that, billionaires and CEOs and others hold too much power and too much influence, and they write different rules for themselves than other Americans have to live by. And so I think, where Democrats have a good opportunity here to spotlight Musk's conflict of interest, how he's not only maybe setting up his own companies, but also how he could be interfering with competitors and a very competitive environment, whether it's on AI or some of his other businesses. And that's not the American way. And I think there's a big opportunity for Democrats to seize that moment and really put a spotlight, especially as some of those consequences of these actions start to ripple back down to the American people, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, it's an interesting development that we'll be tracking. Now, the controversies notwithstanding, Musk is no doubt wielding a pretty solid amount of power right now with Trump's blessings. Multiple courts have stepped in to temporarily halt Trump and Musk's plans, but without much success so far. Do you foresee any potential long-term consequences when it comes to the functioning of federal agencies?
I think that's the critical question right now in the United States. I think there's the question of some of these individual agencies and what they'll look like going forward. But more importantly, and even not to be dramatic, but a potential constitutional crisis for us is if Musk and Trump ignore the judicial branch's authority here to put a stop or at least slow down some of the actions they're taking. If we lose that balance of power, if the others not step in to make sure that's followed, we're going to have a really challenging time on our hand that then sets the president's precedent, for future administrations and future actions. And so one of the things a lot of folks need to think about is, how do Democrats respond to this if they're in power in 4 years? Does everything shift right back and we erase everything Trump did as he's trying to do with Biden? It's a very difficult and challenging way to run a country, in my opinion.
And do you think that could subsequently erode public trust? What's the American people's perspective on this?
Yeah, I think we've seen an erosion in public trust for years, if not decades here. I think part of the reason so many people seem to be supportive of what Trump and Musk are doing is because of that distrust in government, and they are seen as change agents. But again, the approach they're taking, where they're not as transparent as they're at least claiming to be, and they're not educating folks on what the consequences of some of these actions could be, that distrust could easily shift towards them. And as people start to realize their government benefits aren't coming through anymore, or some of the aid programs we did around the world are hurting America now that we've pulled back, and helping other adversaries fill that void. As consumer protections maybe go away on different issues, that'll start to, really turn the point of view towards Trump and Musk of, we trusted you all to do this, and you didn't do it the way we expected you to do it, and maybe you even enriched yourselves in the process.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next question where, we see for now that Musk and Trump, two heavyweights, are on the same side for the time being, but some analysts have come out and predicted that they're potentially headed for a breakup given their volatile personalities and need or want to be the alpha dog in every room, and especially given Trump's propensity to discard allies at will, really, in his first time in office, or his first 4 years in office. What's your take on that?
No, I would firmly place myself in that same camp. I think this will be a short-lived relationship. I mean, for all the reasons you said, Trump, likes to take credit, likes to be the alpha dog, likes to be the one who's seen in charge. I think he's, basic jealousy. I think as you see photos of Elon Musk on Time magazine sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, I think that sort of stuff will start to bother Trump. And, we'll see if Musk is savvier than those who have come before him to maybe manage those feelings from Trump and reassure the president that he's still the right ally. But given history, I think this will be a short-lived relationship between the two of them.
All right. So even if you believe that it's going to be a short-lived relationship, do you think somehow that this Muskification of the U.S. government, or the influence that Musk has managed to wield in his short stint thus far, could become a model for future administrations? Or do you think this could be just a temporary disruptive approach targeted at making quick changes?
I think the Musk component of this is likely to be temporary. I find it, just given the nature of who he is, I'm finding it hard to envision the next Democratic administration or even the next Republican administration would have a very similar role for such a larger-than-life personality, and especially one from the private sector, not elected to federal government. I think the Trump actions of this, of coming in right away, making serious changes to executive orders, kind of asserting their will, almost ignoring Congress and like I said, the courts to put their agenda forward in this fast and furious way. I do think that could unfortunately become a more permanent position of American government, and you could see, again, the next Democratic president coming in and trying to quickly undo or quickly fix all the things they want to see happen based on what Trump's actions were. So that's a precedent that I'm skeptical and cautious of in terms of the benefits it brings us, but one I do think might be lasting from this administration.
All right, Bryan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show as always. Thanks for your time and have a great evening.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was Bryan DeAngelis, partner and head of Washington office at the Penta Group. You're listening to Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.